I want to start by sincerely thanking everyone who has ever watched a video on my channel. From those of you who followed the channel's progress since it began just over a year ago, to those who are tuning in for the first time. Ultimately, horology and making videos is a hobby for me, and all I want to do is make the best content I can. And I'm sure if you were to look back at the first video on the channel and compare it to now, there is a pretty noticeable difference, but it's still far from the finished article. So thank you for all your support on the journey of this channel. I'm saying all of this because not only is it the first anniversary of the channel, but we've also just hit 2,000 subscribers, and given the name of the video, I thought it was an appropriate way to begin. I'll be crystal clear, the amount of money generated through adverts for a channel this small is tiny, but it is enough to fund a few small watch purchases for review, and that in turn takes some of the burden off my personal finances. I'm extremely proud of this watch, because even if you don't like all the content I've made, I'm sure you can see how much time and effort has gone into it. The fact that I was able to buy a watch as a result of all of these efforts means a lot to me, and it wouldn't be possible without your viewership. So just take this as sincere appreciation from me for your time, but also a commitment from me to keep making content, keep responding to your comments, and keep making videos to respond to requests. With all that said, let's get into the video. For context, I made a video recently on my Timex Q Quartz, which I've used as a beta watch for the last few years. If you've seen that video, you'll have seen that the watch is discoloured, scratched, and has been loved, used, and indeed taken a beating. So when my first couple of paychecks came through from YouTube and I wanted something significant yet affordable to mark the occasion, an upgrade to my trusty beater seemed like the perfect choice. In this video we're going to take a close look at the Timex M79 Automatic that I bought. To review it, yes, but also to discuss whether or not it's actually an upgrade over the Quartz variant. For transparency, let's start with the cost. I paid the equivalent of $180 for this model. To US based viewers, I highly doubt that is much of a deal, but just know that prices across the pond are higher, and this actually represents a pretty sizable discount from the recommended retail price. For a little further context, that is just over double what I paid for my Quartz model a couple of years before. With that gulf in price in mind, I think it's worth starting by looking at how much of an upgrade the Automatic is over the Quartz, if any. Since the Quartz crisis and the advent of Swiss brands reinventing themselves as purveyors of luxury goods, there has been a common conception that mechanical and automatic watches are simply better because of the craftsmanship involved. I'll be honest, I don't think that makes sense. I think a hand-finished mechanical or automatic movement is a thing of absolute beauty because you can see it working, and while complex, it is inherently understandable. As with any kind of modern technology, quartz movements are something you might be able to conceptualize and understand, but you can't really see them working, and for me that's the real reason why I would prefer a mechanical automatic. The fact is though, quartz movements are cheaper, more accurate, and don't require you to constantly set the time. A lot of the time on YouTube, you'll see channels talking about the appeal of a smooth sweep of the second hand, and how that is a lot more appealing than the tick of a quartz. I don't disagree, but the idea of a smooth sweep out of a cheap mechanical or automatic movement just isn't that realistic in my experience. When even chronometer standard watches aren't as smooth as a spring drive, which also incorporate a quartz crystal, I'm really not sure why we tend to have such a disparaging view of the quartz models themselves. Thinking about it, I can probably answer that question, to be honest. It's to do with poor quality movements used in fashion watches that are unreliable and don't have any longevity. But is that something we should necessarily hold against established watchmakers like Timex? This is all a very roundabout way of me saying that I don't really believe that the automatic movement in the M79 is an upgrade over the Quartz from the Q. Timex don't even tell you what the movement is, so it doesn't appear to be something that they're shouting from the rooftops about. I think I'm right in saying that it's a Miyota 8205, which has an expected daily deviation between 20 and 40 seconds per day. By comparison, a quartz movement will have less deviation than that over an entire month of running. The point is that if we're being completely objective, I've paid twice as much for a considerably less accurate watch. On to other details. The M79 is also considerably bulkier than the Timex Q. It's bigger at 40mm in diameter instead of 38, it's thicker at 14.5mm compared to 11.5mm, and of course it's heavier to wear on wrist. To me personally, all three of those larger figures make the watch worse, but I do appreciate that not everyone will share that sentiment. Instead of dwelling on that, let's focus on things that I think are appreciably better with the M79. The first thing being the bracelet. Both models feature a period correct woven stainless steel bracelet, but from my experience, the Timex Q was a hair ripper and the M79 has been pretty comfortable. Unfortunately, both models also come with a period correct clasp, which, let's be polite about it, sucks. The other obvious improvement, at least to my eyes, is the exhibition caseback. I mentioned earlier that one appeal of an automatic or mechanical movement is being able to see it in operation and understand how it functions. While the automatic in the M79 isn't exactly a beautiful thing to behold, I do think that having the ability to see it easy is a welcome addition for the extra investment. From a looks perspective, both models are pretty similar, but I would argue that the M79 is a slight upgrade. I prefer the more traditional printwork on the bezel. There are also a few minor upgrades across the board that culminate into a better whole. The T on the hour hand, the loom pip on the bezel, the bordered hands and loom, and the printwork at 6 o'clock. One thing that I really wanted to see though on the M79 that I didn't get is the edge of the bezel. It's still plastic, which I think is a real shame, as I think alongside the bracelet it's one of the weaker components of the quartz model. Now you'll have seen here that I haven't exactly been hugely positive about the M79 compared to its smaller quartz alternative, but I want to be clear, I'm not trying to imply that the M79 is a bad watch, merely that as consumer advice, if you are only going to buy one of these models, I personally think the quartz is the better option. To me, I'm an absolute sucker for 70s sports watch styling, and I don't think it's possible to get authentic access to reissued models from the decade than this. Sure, you can get cheaper homages to more expensive watches, but that isn't quite the same as what's on offer here. Yes, the M79 is a bigger, bulkier watch, and for everyday wear, I would prefer something smaller, lighter, and more refined. But I didn't buy this for everyday wear. I bought it as a replacement beta, and for that purpose, I have to say I am nowhere near as picky. To be honest with you, while I've worn this watch in, to be able to discuss it confidently for this video, it's actually going to have to wait its turn in order to achieve true beta status, as I feel the quartz still has a few more adventures left in it yet. I'll just wrap the review up by saying that if you're looking for something as more of an everyday wear, which I'm not for a moment saying that these watches can't be, but I'd be tempted to look towards the Falcon Eye range, as there are some real lookers there. A little off topic to finish, but I've recently had a few people asking me about YouTube and video making rather than watches. And while I cannot remotely profess to be an expert, there are more than a few rough edges on my videos that will convince you to the contrary, I'm sure. I am more than happy to try and answer these kind of questions too. There are tens of thousands of people on the platform more qualified than me to discuss this kind of thing with, but comments are easily missed on larger channels, so I can understand why someone might ask here knowing that they'll get a response. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this.